Hey, I'm Anji Ismail. My initial yes are AI, but this show called the AI Drop is not about me. It's about artificial intelligence. So I invite the best founders and builders to tell us their challenges and their success while they are building the next wave of application that is going to change the world. Make sure to follow the show so you get notified when we have a new episode. Comment, share. I really appreciate it. It's not my full-time job. I'm actually the founder of a company called Fint, where we apply AI to finance. I hope you enjoy the episodes. Let me know what you think. Hey, and I'm here with Ceena Modarres, who is the co-founder and head of AI ML at Of.One. So Of.One is a super interesting company, Y Combinator backed company. And also, as a disclaimer, I should say I'm a very small investor in this startup. I love it. And also, as another disclaimer, the other co-founder Will is also an investor in my own company, Fint. But today we're going to dive into this amazing product that you have built around voice and multimodal application. So I will let you just like describe a little bit what is Of.One and what's your mission. But welcome, Sina. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here. So yeah, we at Of.One build voice agents for quick service restaurants, fast food industry, right? And voice agents really come down to today to two different use cases. First, the drive-through. The drive-through is obviously a critical channel for fast food restaurants. In some cases, it is up to 70% of a restaurant's sales.
Mm, wow.
Meanwhile, the phone at these often understaffed, overworked stores is left unanswered, and things like catering requests or fundraising requests will go unanswered. So we build agents that take care of that for the restaurant.
Okay. Yeah. And one thing I was fascinated about this, like especially in the drive-through, is how much food is going to waste because like operators, when they are taking your order, they are not getting everything, and sometimes they will put hazelnut while you are allergic to hazelnut in your ice cream, and so they have to throw it, right? So this is super fascinating that this last mile, not last mile, like last feed delivery, because it's you're literally in front of the person, that is not solved correctly.
Absolutely. I mean, I think coming into building this company, I was previously a much more traditional ML engineer that was obsessed with optimizing metrics, increasing that accuracy figure. And accuracy is critical for this use case. But there's also this other element of providing a great customer experience, making sure that people are coming out of the restaurant happier than when they went in. And a lot of that is more difficult to measure, but just as important. The example you gave is one in particular. So making sure that allergies are accounted for, making sure that if somebody asks for recommendations or to understand the content of a particular donut or burger, that we can provide that information. And now, with technology progress, particularly with LLMs, we're able to do that in a compelling way, whereas previously it was much more of a structured, robotic, step-based process.
And yeah, so you mentioned that like before joining, so it's your first time being a founder. So you were at Capital One, at Hyperscience, and so it's your first time jumping into the entrepreneurship journey. And so you mentioned like in your previous role as ML engineer, and I'm sure you saw a lot of big issues. What it is kind of harder to build from scratch this type of solution?
Yeah, I mean, so there are some technical challenges,
Mm-hmm.
but just more generally, I think that one thing I wasn't prepared for that has been a learning curve, but also really fun, is how much you need to bias towards action, towards doing things to get to an answer. There's always a ton of uncertainty over, how do you compel your customers to move faster towards deploying into more stores? How do you drive a better customer experience? It's very important to do that by a quick trial and error and to
Mm-hmm.
put it out there into a real world setting than it would be to sit there and ideate and think through what is the hypothetically best solution. And then I think that one thing that really drew me towards building my own company is beyond the work of turning an idea into reality is also learning and refining that idea, learning and refining what matters. And so the relationship is often between the business and the customer. And out of that comes the details of what is being built and how you build it. And I think that as an ML engineer, I was a little more removed from that than I realized. Of course, we were product focused, paying attention to what actually drives value, but living that day to day, not disconnecting from that ever, and knowing that the fortune of the company depends on it, really refines how you think about that relationship. And as an ML engineer, the other interesting challenge was we're building a product from scratch. We have zero data to get started with.
Yeah,
We need to
like
find clever.
real time data. Like also you have this thing that is very specific to your activities, that you are in the real world applications. You might need data when it's raining, when there is a lot of traffic, data when, I don't know, the person has a different type of voice, or speaking with an accent like me, like when I order here especially. I'm trying my best accent, and sometimes they just give me something very random. So I guess, yeah, the training piece on all these voices and condition is maybe very, very hard to do.
Yeah, it's interesting because in theory, people talk a lot about that data flywheel, about how, great companies, great ML companies have the ability to increasingly make their products better as they collect more data.
More
Now,
data,
the
yeah.
trade-off for that is when you start, you have nothing. I mean, today we're scaling to 45 stores, and it's the amount of data feels incredible to me from where we started, where we were in zero stores at that point. So it was kind of a process of how do we figure out how to simulate as much of the real world as possible while
Hmm.
we don't have that data, and then transition our methodology to account for the incrementally increasing supply of data.
Yeah. No, that's super. That's fascinating. And also, I imagine, like, for the brands that are working with you, for the customers, there is like a revenue generation for your solution, right? It can generate more revenue. It can also save costs. And so, from a technical perspective, would you say when you design this application and this product as a whole, what are you trying to optimize for in the first, like in the very first iteration, when will go out and pitch those new customers and try to convince them, etc. But evaluating the outputs of AI and how to translate the actual AI powered solution into outcome for the company is pretty hard. So do you have any ways to think about that? How you prioritize certain outcomes for the actual customers?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it always starts with accuracy. It always starts with your ability to understand what the customer is ordering and give the customer confidence that this new thing that they're interacting with that they've never seen before, maybe the first AI they've ever interacted with in the real world, is actually working. So when we started, we were obsessed with accuracy. And so you may think, okay, we tried to solve it with named entity recognition or some sort of traditional extraction based approach. That actually doesn't even work in our case because menus are constantly changing. So
Okay.
that is still a problem that we are working through improving, trying to find ways to make it better in these zero shot contexts where there's a completely new item. We don't have time to retrain the model
Yeah.
every single time, or we're onboarding a new brand. It's a completely different menu. How do we solve this problem without needing to rely on training a completely new model from scratch is a super interesting technical problem. And this is going back to that kind of tight coupling between what I thought matters as an ML engineer and what really matters to customers. As we went out there and we started to just show our system, which was relying initially, it was basically only performing extraction and it was providing these very robotic acknowledgments like, okay, got it. And that was kind of it. It seemed like the enterprise buyer and the employees were a little bit turned off by the experience. It
Hmm.
was
Okay.
unnatural, it was robotic, it didn't feel personal. This is ultimately fundamentally a customer service problem. And we were approaching it like it was document processing.
Hmm.
No, we're interacting with real people that,
Yeah, I see.
and the brands require their loyalty. So then came in the other part of, okay, we have to make a really pleasant experience. And that starts with driving the conversation, engaging in a natural way, providing the customer with not only that feeling of reliability and accuracy, but the ability to help them get through an order with limited to zero work on their part.
Yeah, so it's balancing the automation and the human touch because you actually, yes, you're automating a process, you're empowering it with AI, but at the end of the day, it has to be at least at the same level or ideally much better than the current experience. And yeah, as you said, starting with no data, brands that are also like the marketers at this type of brands are super good to come up with crazy new names for their burgers, their sauce, their ice cream, their whatever. So you have to build all of this as part of your product. Yeah, I mean that's super interesting. And so one thing you mentioned in this idea of going from basically no data, no way to actually build the product in the first place. So you went back to what you said, like what the customers actually want and what they are looking for. And so can you tell me, especially from the technical perspective, how is it complex? How hard is it to go from like a model that is on the shelf today? Because I know you guys are not building like the foundational model, but you are actually making the application with it, which is
Yes.
maybe as difficult or even more difficult because right now you see like with very little resources people and researchers are pushing great models out there, but yeah, so LLM don't work out of the box. So can you tell me a little bit about this in your cases specifically?
Right. LLMs, they don't tend to work for applied use cases like ours out of the box. And I think a major part of that as well is that customer experience we talked about, which does involve, they are very good at instruction following today, but the latency matters quite a bit. So responsiveness of our system to make it feel as if somebody is there and
Yeah.
that you're having a natural flow of conversation limits our ability to use models that are larger, that have reasoning. That's off the table for us. We are, in some ways, latency obsessed. And basically, what that means is we need to make sure that the models we use can go farther than they were originally meant to, right? We have to stick with the
Yeah.
smallest models possible. So a lot of customization is required, and that does require using many of the traditional tools available to you. We do fine tune basically all of our models. We perform retrieval across several models in our system. But there's also this interesting challenge of, okay, how do I use these models together to solve this problem?
Mm.
You can think of it as something of an agentic architecture,
Hmm.
but it's not limited to kind of a unidirectional relation between an agent and its tools. We need to think about running several different modeling paradigms in parallel and having them interact with each other in such a way that we can solve this problem, which is something we are constantly iterating on. We are constantly taking the pieces we've put together and trying to move them around to see what is the impact on the downstream experience of the customer.
Okay. Yeah, that's, and I imagine like you have also the complexity of the location, right? Like, can you share a little bit about how it runs actually on the, so if I go to the drive-through today, is there a server in that restaurant that is serving me where you host the model like at this restaurant, or do you have like a cloud infrastructure, which I guess, and like of course the latency might have some impact there. So how many loop, like I think for people who are not too familiar with just like information, how it moves, like how many where my voice go, for example,
Yeah.
when I order like a burger at a drive-through, does it stay in that restaurant or is there like an inference that is served somewhere else? Just high level, of course, it would be really cool to share.
Yeah. I mean, we are largely a cloud infrastructure. Today, we ask that customers that we either integrate with a customer's existing screen or
Okay.
that they work with one of our hardware partners to install that screen.
Okay.
We then have a small computer in that kiosk that sits in
Okay.
the drive-through,
Hmm.
which runs a web browser. So we kind of have a multimodal experience that also
Nice.
displays the order confirmation, and it also displays upsells. So our system will offer the customer to add a, let's say, like a pie for this much more. So we have that running in a web browser, and the audio that's going in to that web browser will then get forwarded to our backend system, where that's
Okay.
all in the cloud.
Yep.
And that's where basically every sort of kind of data processing and AI ML happens before it comes back to the browser, which is sitting in that kiosk, and responds to the customer and also displays any relevant updates to the UI, the user interface, or to the menu confirmation.
Mm. Okay. No, that makes sense, and I guess there is a lot of upside in there for the brands as your model get better and get to learn from the orders and what goes well with that type of coffee or with that
Yeah.
type of burger, what people order. Like if you can get the models to get better with that, someone that is here, in on the East Coast might discover that a nice addition to their latte or their coffee is actually this nice pastry or this nice donut, while they never do that. And I think AI creativity is super interesting in that. Like if you get this type of data and you are able to store it, to run it, and to improve the models that you're serving to your customer, I think it's wonderful. So you mentioned like multimodal. What is exciting for you these days? Like we're seeing so many release, so many launch. Like there's just so much that it's hard to keep up. Anything that gets you very excited, that is a little bit frontier, that is pushing the boundaries of what's being done today.
Yeah, I am very excited about progress on voice LLMs.
Okay.
I think that it is inevitable that voice LLMs are the primary paradigm in which all voice agents, from phone to drive-through to whatever application, are built. It's still early days. We certainly have run experiments with different available open source models, different closed source APIs, and
Hmm.
there are still some kinks to work out, particularly around instruction following, some of that turn taking and interruption handling, and just general accuracy and hallucinations, which fall behind the frontier models that are just text LLMs. But you can see the progress and the potential, right? I think that learning how to really have a conversation is inevitable, particularly as the technology improves and more data becomes available. I mean, yesterday I had, not me personally, but there was the public launch of Sesame, which was this 8 billion parameter voice LLM. And it, this demo just completely blew me away. It appears to be a completely different paradigm for representing voice data within a larger LLM. And
Hmm.
I'm very excited to see where it goes, how people iterate on it. It seems like they're going to open source the model. I can't wait to play around with it a little more. I think it's incredible.
Okay. No, that's really good. Actually, maybe doubling down on the open source, closed API, etc. So you're working with large brands, right? Like not everybody has a drive-through. So how do they react to potentially, risk related to data going to, a closed source API versus, self-hosting a model on themselves? And what's your position on the future of closed source versus open source, for example? Where do you see it going? Your opinion is super interesting, and also your customer opinion is very relevant for, I think, for me and for the audience, I guess.
Yeah, it's a good question. Our customer is still figuring out how to approach large language models generally. I wouldn't say they are particularly hesitant to use closed source models today. Now, that is an evolving opinion and one in which we hope to guide them to make the right decision for them in terms of data security, in terms of experience and accuracy, our ability to improve the system. I personally am a big advocate of open source models. We use them in several places in our code base, smaller LLMs like Mistral that we pulled off of Hugging Face relatively easily. they're very easy to kind of pull off the shelf and run it
So
quickly.
can I pause you on this because I'm sure we're gonna have a lot of French people listening, and Mistral is is like the only thing people are talking about in France, which is good for once that there is a technology going out. So it's very rare that we hear in the US someone actually using Mistral. So if you can just mention why, for example, I guess maybe the smaller models, open source, are good quality. That's what you're saying, and easy to deploy.
Yeah. I mean, they're much, much smaller. So they're easier for me with consumer hardware at our four-person startup to pull down, experiment with, really prod in deep to understand my experiment and see what are my opportunities for improving it. It gives me significantly more levers to improve the system as well, given that I have access to all generated responses. But most importantly, the latency side, right? We need those fast responses. In terms of Mistral versus other small LLMs, I have explored quite a few. I found that Mistral was the most adaptive to LoRa. Now, that being said, I will continue to explore
Yeah,
new
of course.
LLMs as they arrive. But that being said, today I'm finding Mistral to be quite effective for a few of our use cases.
No, that's amazing. No, that's great. And I love also your answer on open source. I think there is this debate starting up where some people might say that at some point closed source models are going to cut their API access because they are building their own product, their own final product. And for us as startups, it's going to be very important to have people like you who can actually, behind the scene, the models, host them, fine tune them, etc. And not only just rely on the big closed source solution that might be OpenAI or Anthropic today, because they might just cut everything tomorrow. I mean, it's still a debate, but
I
go
agree. I
ahead.
mean, sometimes I think of myself as being a dinosaur, right? Like nobody fine tunes anymore. But at the same time, I mean, my kind of ability to quickly pull down and fine tune a model, I think saves us time. And,
Okay, yeah,
time is of the essence at
yeah.
a small.
I mean, it makes sense. I think it depends on the use case. Also, it depends on the progress of the end in the application and where the end customers are waiting you, like what they are expecting. There are models that are ready right now, like you just almost plug and play, and it does a good copywriting, right? Like I think copywriting is pretty straightforward now. Everybody knows how to prompt, etc. But there are a lot of things, or like on my side, I work on the finance stuff. It's not ready. Like tabular data is still very hard. Manipulating spreadsheets. There's a lot of things that doesn't work, and I'm sure you in the voice to text and in your space where latency is super important, accuracy is super important, etc. There's still a lot to do. So fine tuning might be the way there. So it's really cool. So maybe to end up this discussion that was super great. Actually, I learned a lot, and I love getting some of these actual technical details because it's not every day that I have the chance to hear that. What are some of the biggest challenge that you have right now, and also some of the thing that gets you very excited related to the progress you have? Might be number of orders going through the drive-through. Are we going to see or to interact? I'm sure you're embedded, so we might not see Of.One like the brand itself, but well, yeah, like this challenge versus excitement that make you not go back to your banking job or another company and keep building.
Yeah. For us, I think in the medium term, we're focused on two different things, really three. One is how do we take our company that has provided a product across several stores in a couple states, and now we have a deal to go to 45 stores? How do we just support a full enterprise deployment? And I think that there's just a significant amount of engineering work required for us to scale and support our product across all those stores. It does involve a significant amount of backend work, but there's a lot on the ML AI side as well, just in terms of assessing how your system is performing, trying to understand whether there's some variability in performance at an individual store, and trying to understand that relationship between scenarios in which we are unable to automate an order, we are unable
Mhm.
to accurately perform the end task, and the root cause of that failure. I think that that's very important in thinking about the next generation of our products. And then we are onboarding several new brands in parallel. And I
Nice.
think that that leads to this really interesting challenge of how do we make our product plug and play as we add new customers. And then there's just a whole bunch of challenges that are unique to these new brands. So we are in the process of figuring out how to become multilingual. Uh,
Hmm.
Particularly in the voice domain, this is a non trivial paradigm. We need to be able to more effectively handle promotions and loyalty and all the ways in which somebody can
Hmm.
present that information at the drive through. So if somebody comes in and says, I have a code and starts reading out a code,
Yeah.
what do we do? Right.
It's like
And it's
36 characters code. Like even a human won't understand it. And now you have to have a model understand.
absolutely. And then I think it's just a process of cranking on making our conversations more natural, making our accuracy higher. And I think that that kind of also fits in neatly into the third category, which basically is the endless project in front of us, creating the most pleasant, natural experience using ML. One that isn't just the most accurate, but the most pleasant is something which I imagine we'll be working on for years.
Yeah, I'm sure. And you do are you do you have any specific needs right now? So of course, if there are any brands that have drive-through, I encourage them to contact you guys. But anything on the hiring front or anything the community can help with?
Yeah, we are hiring. So, if you're excited about building in the MLAI space in a real world application that's interacting with humans every single day, we would love to chat with you. So, particularly engineers today, but we
Yeah, it's
are
hard.
starting to eye adding a couple support functions as well.
Okay. Yeah, so I will share also the link to the website so that people can check you out and apply. And so you are a Y Combinator company, so just this is a huge, um, it's a huge mark of quality. And so I will encourage everybody to check you out for sure. So Sina, thank you very much. It was really great to have this conversation. You really shared some really good stuff about what you're building and what are the challenges. So, I just wish you all the best with Of.One, not only because I'm an investor, but also because I think my experience with drive-through is always bad, and I know it's humans because I hear them and I see them, and it's probably first because of my accent, but I think there is a lot of opportunity for you guys.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And hopefully we can improve that experience for you.
I'm sure. Thank you, man.
Thanks.